Well, hello, my friends. Welcome back to the Midgard Press. So, today we're going to be covering combat and some damage. We're actually going to break combat down into three separate videos because there's a lot to cover, there's a lot to talk about, there's a lot to analyze. And I don't want to give you all the short end of the stick by going over it very quickly to the point that you all are not able to thoroughly understand what's going on. Now, even at this point, it's still a lot to understand. So, we'll go through it and we'll go from there. But first thing let's talk about is this dwarf, actually two dwarfs, maybe three dwarfs, fighting against the Nightkin. We've got an orc right here, and we've got a goblin riding a wolf or a warg, whichever they deem it. Because in this, there's multiple times within the book that they go back and forth by saying that they ride wolves, and there's one specific encounter in Bothold's Load where they talk about wargs. So, let it be what it be. We are going to continue on, and we're going to go from there. So, rounds and initiative. Life as an adventurer is hard and often violent. In Dragonbane, you can run into wild beasts, malicious raiders, and demonic monsters. Combat can be rough for your player character, sometimes even lethal. Before you enter combat, you should always ask yourself, is it worth it? Now, I've done multiple sessions. I've had several sessions where everybody survives. I've had one session where it was a TPK, total party kill. I've had a couple other sessions where players go down. A couple of them survived, even though they went down. But then again, a couple also just bit the dust flat out. So, it's hard to say what will happen because it's all on the dice. If the dice say, if the dice decide to roll low or roll high, it's on the dice. And I say it 100% every single time. The dice giveth or the dice taketh. Plain and simple. So rounds and initiative. Combat is played in rounds, each representing roughly 10 seconds. At the start of each round, the first step is to decide who has the initiative. That is, in what order the combatants will act during the round. So, with the release of the game, you are given initiative cards 1 through 10. Now, with the initiative cards, it's plain and simple. If somebody draws a 2, they go second. Unless nobody draws a number 1, then they go first. Nobody can draw the same number, which makes it really, really simple. Now, if you're not using that, you could do what I've seen some people do, and I do this, where you take a D10 and you roll it. You then go about the route of, whoever has 1 goes first, who has 2 goes first, so on and so forth. Now, if you're doing it the roll method, where your characters or your players are rolling their dice, and then you're rolling the dice as the GM for your monsters, NPCs, creatures, whatever, then there is a good potential that somebody will get the same number. Now, what I like to do is whoever has the higher agility, not movement, agility. And this has happened once where 2 players rolled a D10, got the same number, and they have the same agility. So at that point, you just do rollies, whoever has the better number. So anyways, the 10 initiative cards in the box are numbered 1 through 10. Each player taking part in the conflict, voluntary or otherwise, draws a random card at the beginning of the round. And the GM draws cards for the NPCs. This is called drawing the initiative. The number on the card determines the order in which you act in this round. Number 1 acts first, number 2 acts second, so on and so forth as acted. Your place in the initiative order is called your turn. Place your initiative card by your character sheet so everyone can see in which order everyone acts. The GM puts their card or cards, because the monsters sometimes go more than just once, in front of them. When all participants have had their turn, the round is over and a new round begins by drawing new initiative. Initiative for NPCs. To make things simple, particularly in large battles, the GM can draw a single initiative card for a group of NPCs. All NPCs in that group act on the same turn. Same round, sorry. The order among them is decided by the GM. So, here's the thing. I do this with, like, if there's multiple goblins per encounter, they all act on the same initiative. If there's number of cultists, then they all act. If there is multiple of the same monster, I draw for the monster, and all of those monsters that are the same draw on the same. That's just how I do it. It makes it easy. Surprise. If you perform an attack that the GM deems surprising to your enemy, you get to choose your initiative, any initiative card you want in the first round of combat. If several characters participate in the surprise attack, you may choose a card, or you may all choose a card. Sorry, words. The other combatants draw the initiative from their cards that remain. At the start of the second round, everyone draws the initiative as usual. So it's really, really easy, but there's a waiting option. So once on your turn and round, you can choose to wait. This means that you swap initiative cards and therefore places in the initiative order with another creature whose turn comes after yours. You can swap cards with other player characters as well as NPCs, or group of NPCs acting on the same turn, and cannot reuse the trade. However, you cannot swap initiative cards with anyone who has already had their turn or themselves to wait earlier in the round. So monsters often have multiple turns in a single round and therefore draw multiple initiative cards. In that case, you decide which card you want, as long as it comes after your current turn in the initiative order. Monsters themselves never choose to wait. So, this could be interesting. And the reason I say that is, depending on what your profession is, depending on what your objective is within combat, are you going to try to stay towards the back, or do you want to run and hide? Do you want to get up and close and personal? You know, if you draw number 1, number 2, number 3, so on and so forth, if you're up in the lower numbers, so you're at the top of the initiative, you can do whatever you want. You can trade with anybody. Now, again, if you do trade with a monster and it becomes the monster's turn, they do not wait. They just attack. And that's just what they do because they're monsters. But as player characters, they have the option to change their initiative, which, you know, there's no such thing as holding an action like there is in D&D or even Pathfinder. There's no such thing as holding your action. There is simply waiting, where you can change your initiative. And the reason I bring up the waiting or the holding your action is because I have a lot of players who are used to doing that. You know, they're used to that ability to do a later action, or if something happens, they can react to it. but not in this case. Not in this case. You have to take your turn, trade your initiative, or that's it. If you just don't want to do anything that turn, that's fine. You don't have to do anything that turn, but that's your option. You got 3. So actions and movements. On your turn in the round, you can move and perform 1 action, and that's it. Forever and always within this game, your character will only have 1 action. Now, the only way to get around that, to have multiple actions per round, is to get the heroic abilities that we talked about previous episodes. Okay, go back to the heroic abilities and you can check that out. So you simply explain how you want to move and what action you want to perform. If necessary, you also roll the dice to see whether you succeed. You decide whether to move or before you act, or vice versa. You even use part of your movement, perform your action, and then finish the movement. So you can do an action, move. You could move, do an action, move, or you could do an action and move. That's it. Actions. Or technically, I guess you could move, action, move, action. Or action, move, depending on how many actions you get. Which again, the max is 2, but most commonly 1. So actions. An action in combat can be many different things, but the list below summarizes the most common ones. These actions are described in detail later in this chapter. So free actions, minor actions such as drawing weapon at hand, keeping or dropping to the ground, shouting a few words are all free actions. See the sidebar on the next page for a complete list. Free actions do not count as your action in round, but only one can perform 1 of each type per round, and only on your own turn. For example, you can drop down or get up on your turn, but not both. Seems reasonable. Now, before I go into reactions, let's read this box at the bottom that has all of the actions themselves. An action in combat can be many different things, but the most common ones are summarized below. Rules for these actions are found later in this chapter. Dash. This action doubles your movement rate in the round. Melee combat. These can be performed at least, or melee attack. These can be performed against an enemy within 2 meters, 4 meters for long weapons. Ranged attack. Attacks with a ranged weapon can be made against targets with weapons range. Parry. Both melee and ranged attacks can be parried, but the later requires a shield. Parrying is a reaction that takes place outside of your turn and replaces your regular action per round. We'll get into that in more detail because it sounds confusing at first. Same with dodge. Dodging, melee, or ranged attack is also a reaction. Reactions are a little different. Pick up an item. Pick up an item from the ground within 2 meters or from your inventory. Equip, unequip armor / helmets. Suits of armor and helmets protect you from damage, but also restrict your movement. First aid. The healing skill is used to save the life of someone who has had their HP reduced to 0 and is at risk of dying. Rally. You can persuade another player character at 0 HP to rally and keep fighting. Rally's kind of fun. Break down door. Doors can take a certain amount of damage before they break down. Pick lock. Picking a lock requires a sleight of hand roll. Doing so without lockpicks gives you a bane. So anybody can pick a lock. Use item. Use a potion or some other item within 2 meters. Activate ability. Use an innate, which is the kin specific, or heroic ability. Cast spell. In most cases, Casting a spell counts as an action. This includes magic tricks. Some spells are reactions and do not require an action, while others are more time consuming. For more on magic, see chapter 5. And don't worry, we have I can't wait till we get to magic. We're gonna have multiple videos on magic as well. Helping another character gives them a boon to a roll in the same round. Round rest. You rest and recover D6 willpower. This can only be done once per shift. Reaction. Oh, nope, sorry. Go back. Reactions. What am I doing? Reactions. Some actions are not performed on your turn, but on the opponent's. These are called reactions and include things like parrying or dodging attacks. This uses up your own turn in the round, which means that you cannot perform a reaction if you have already had your turn and performed an action. Flip the initiative card Flip your initiative card after performing a reaction. Wow, I don't know why that was so hard to read. Does that make sense to you all? Like, does that make sense to you all? Let me pull something up real quick. Let me show you all something. All right, so I have Microsoft Paint opened up. Okay, let's just say that we're talking about dodging. Actually, I tell you what, let's do this. All right, so let's just say that a monster has, or let's go with an NPC. Let's go with just like an orc or a goblin. Let's say they're attacking you. You decide that you're going to use the dodge action, which again is a reaction. But the orc is number 1, and then you, the PC player character, is number 3. Okay? Let's just say that they want to attack you. Now, it's saying that you only get one action per round, okay? So you can either use your action to do a melee attack or a ranged attack, or you could parry, or you could dodge. So if the orc is attacking you and you decide to dodge, you no longer have an action for this round. Now, if the orc decides to attack you and you parry, then you lose your turn that round. So, but the thing is, and I'm still getting used to this aspect as well, when you are attacking, again, you only have one action. But if you are protecting yourself by parrying or dodging, yes, you lose your turn, but the next round, okay, let's do this. The next round, copy. Okay, I got 4 rounds right here, okay? Let's just say that the orc on the next round now goes 3rd, and you as the player character now goes 2nd. Okay, so even though you used your action to protect yourself in the first round, the second round, you might have the potential of going first, so you could attack the orc. Like, that's the thing. Just because you used your action to protect yourself doesn't mean that you won't be able to defeat the foe at some point, because the initiative changes every round. Okay, every round. So there's a potential that you could survive this and attack next round. So I wanted to explain that a little bit more. All right, free actions. Free actions. You can draw a weapon, draw, exchange, or put away a weapon kept at hand, change position, throw yourself to the ground or get up, drop item. Drop an item on the ground or shout, say or shout a few words. So at the very bottom of your character sheet, and actually, let me do that. Let me get that pulled up real quick. All right. So down here, at the bottom of the character sheet, you have 3 slots that has, weapon, shield, grip, range, damage, durability, and features. Now, this is where your on-hand weapons are, okay? So these would be weapons that are attached to your belt. If you've got something attached to your back, if you've got a knife that's maybe attached on a sling over your chest, or something like that. That's why it's a free action, because it's right there. It requires no real movement or requirements or anything like that. It's attached to you, so you pull it out and then you can go for it. With the change position, you can lay down on the ground, jump up. Excuse me. In other TTRPGs, such as D&D or Pathfinder, those two I know specifically, it requires part of your movement to do that alone, to stand up or get down. It takes half of your movement, to be honest. Not here. Not here. Excuse me. If you want to drop an item, just outright drop it. Done. Now, you can't drop an item and then pick another one up. At least, not necessarily. Shout, you can say or shout a few words like, get out of the way, or hey, you ugly person, look at me. Whatever you want to do. Movement. When performing a reaction, you also lose your movement in the round. Several reactions, such as dodging or parrying, give certain movement as part of your action. You can read more about that on page 45. We're almost there. We're on page 43. So, movement. Under normal circumstances, you can move as many meters as your movement rate, but there are a few special cases to consider. Dash. By choosing to dash as your action around, you can move twice as far as normal. Standing or crouching. You can drop to the ground or get up as part of your movement. These are free actions and do not affect your movement per se, but only can be done on your turn. Leaping. As part of your movement, you can make a horizontal leap as long as half of your movement rate. So if you wanted to leap something 4 meters, you have to make an acrobatics roll. If the distance is a quarter of your movement rate or less, you don't need to make. So if I wanted to jump 1 square, which again, each square is a 2 by 2 meters. So if I want to jump 1 square as Quacksome Honeytongue of Green Pond, I can do that. No roll. I'm good. If I wanted to jump something that was 4 meters, I have to do an acrobatics roll. So, not too bad. It's pretty easy. Doors. Passing through a closed but unlocked door costs half your movement in the round. If you cannot move any further, you remain standing by the now open door. A locked door must either be picked open or broken down. Enemies. You cannot move past a standing enemy who wants to stop you. A humanoid creature of human size can block an area roughly 2 by 2 meters. Monsters can block larger areas. To move past an enemy who's blocking you, you must first bring it to the ground and reduce its HP to 0. Friendly individuals can be passed without problem. So what it's saying, it basically told you if you want to get past an enemy, you have to take it down. I love that. That is fantastic. I love that. Free attack. If you are standing within 2 meters of an enemy and then move away from the enemy, you must make an evade. The roll does not count as an action, but if it fails, the enemy immediately gets to perform an additional melee attack against you, a free attack. The free attack does not count as an action and can either be parried nor dodged. Note that a free attack is triggered even if you start your movement at a distance but pass by an enemy. Moving around an enemy does not trigger an attack as long as you stay within 2 meters. So, this is what you call an opportunity attack. And I know I'd seen this. I know I've seen this because some of my players have asked me about it. And I'm like, I know it's somewhere in this book. I cannot remember where it is. I just found it. It's free attack. It's a free action. So in your D&D 5th edition games or even earlier editions, or Pathfinder 1st or 2nd, there's opportunity attacks. And it's just as it says. If you move around the enemy, but you stay within the 2 meters, you're fine. There's no free attack. But if you cross that threshold and you are 1 square away from a monster or NPC, enemy, whatever you want to call them, and you decide to move away from them, they get to attack you for free. 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 Now, this is the big part because it says the free attack does not count as an action, so it cannot be parried or dodged. So be careful out there, be careful out there is all I'm saying. Okay. Oop, sorry. Mouse click. Sneak attack. So the key to winning a conflict is often to attack when the enemy least expects it. It's not necessarily winning a conflict, but if you want the best chance to succeed, then yes, this would be a good idea. Sneak attacks. Sneak attack. When you sneak up on someone undetected and perform an attack, it is called a sneak attack. First, you may make a sneaking roll. Move close enough to attack in a melee combat within 2 meters. Gives you a bane. If you fail, the enemy notices you. Draw initiative. If you succeed, your attack counts as surprising, which means that you can choose any initiative card you want. You also get a boon on your attack, and the target can neither dodge nor parry. Using a subtle weapon increases the damage by 1 die. For example, 2d8 instead of d8. So if you have, like if you're, for example, our knife on Honey Tongue does a d8 damage. It's saying that with a surprise, we would be able to do 2d8 instead of just a d8. Not bad. Sneak attacks are performed individually by 1 attacker against 1 target. Ambush. A special kind of sneak attack is an ambush, lying in wait for an enemy and attacking as it passes by. In this case, each victim makes an awareness roll to spot the ambush with a bane if the attackers are well prepared. All those who fail get the bottom cards, counting from 10 and up. Randomly drawn, of course. Flip the initiative card. Once you have had your turn in round, you can flip your initiative card face down to make it clear that you and everyone else that you have acted. This means that you cannot perform any reaction, such as parrying attack later in the round. So, going back to that for a second, if you are number one, you attack and you hit the person, hit the monster, or whatever. They come up to you and they want to attack you. You cannot take a reaction. You cannot parry or dodge because you have already used your action to attack somebody. So that goes out the window. All right. And this is the last page that we'll cover in this episode. And then we'll, in the next episode, we'll go from here. So combat maps. Let's read the bottom first. Terrain. The terrain where the fighting takes place can affect your movement and actions. Maps usually show what type of terrain is found in different areas. We've got cramped, rough, and dimly lit. There is little space or a low ceiling. All melee weapons, except piercing weapons, page 73, and subtle weapons get a bane on rolls. So that's with cramped space. Rough. Now, the reason they say that for cramped settings, because piercing, you're going straight through. But if you are, bludgeoning or slashing, you have to swing your weapon. Rough. The terrain is difficult to traverse. Whether you move or make an acrobatics roll, not an action, failure means that you fall over and lose the rest of your movement this round. That's hilarious. I love it. Dimly lit imposes a bane on all ranged attacks. Okay. So let's go back up and read combat maps. Combat can take place entirely in your imagination when the GM describing the battlefield and specifying the distance between combatants. However, grid maps are a useful tool in combat as they can be used to keep track of where everyone is. Each square on the map usually represents an area of 2 by 2 meters. Doors, walls, and accents are also shown on the map. Complete adventures for Dragonbane include maps of important sites. On the back of the large map in this box is an empty grid, which can be used for all kinds of battles or battlefields. As a rule, each square on the map can only be occupied by one person at a time, but it is possible to pass through a square which a friendly combatant is positioned. Which, if they say that you can, move through it, then they allow you to move through it. If they say that you can't, then they can't. That's just how it goes. Diagonal movements and attacks are allowed, but not if both squares you want to pass between are blocked or occupied by hostile opponents. You can use miniature figures to represent combatants on a map. This box includes a number of illustrated cardboard figures with plastic bases. You can also use painted figures of plastic or metal. The only limit is your imagination. I love that they say that they physically describe what a miniature is. I love that. 5 foot squares. Okay, here we go. Those of you who have played D&D, those of you who have played Pathfinder, any TTRPG, they've always used feet. Star Trek Adventures, Call of Cthulhu. What other ones have I played? I'm trying to think of others. I can't think of any. Anyways, they all use feet. Now, Dragonbane, Swedish, it uses a different system, and they use meters. So it says 5 foot squares. If you are used to combat maps with 5 by 5 foot squares, and perhaps even own a bunch of such maps, you can easily use them in Dragonbane. Just use them as 5 by 5 foot squares if they are 2 by 2 meters. It will not affect anything in the game. So, all you have to do, if it says you can move 8 meters, cool. You move 8 meters. If it says, um, it's up to you. You can use 5-foot squares, but I like the meters. I've been saying it long enough now for a couple months as I've been running games and whatnot. I'm just used to it by now. So I'm going to keep using the meters. I'm going to keep using the meters. I'm going to keep using the meters. And, if you prefer to use the 5-foot squares, that's cool. You do you, boo boo. Okay, you do you. But we're gonna call it there. Tell me in the bottom, which one are you gonna use? Are you gonna use the 5-foot squares, or are you gonna use the 2x2 meters, square meters? I tell you, it took me a little while, but I'm used to meters and I love it. It just makes it easy. But tell me in the comments, which one do you plan on using? Which one do you plan on saying? So as always, do the thing, like, comment, share, tell all your friends about this, because we're gonna be doing lots and lots of videos. We still have a lot to cover. Still a lot to cover. So as always, my fellow nerds, friends, and family, live on and game on.